When someone throws a belittling comment your way, the natural impulse is to react instantly. Your heart races, your body tightens, and your tongue searches for words that will defend you or strike back. But here's the secret most people never master: the smartest first response is no response at all. Not because you are weak, not because you are surrendering, but because silence in that moment is more powerful than any defensive phrase you could ever speak. The pause creates space. Space between their intention and your reaction. Space between their attempt to wound and your choice to stand tall. You see, belittling comments are meant to provoke. They are meant to get under your skin, make you question yourself, or push you into an emotional outburst that can be used against you later. When you immediately react, you hand over your control, but when you pause, even for just a few seconds, you send a clear signal: I am not easily moved by your words. That stillness unsettles them more than any clever comeback ever could. Think about the last time someone said something meant to cut you down. Maybe it was in the workplace, when a colleague smirked and said, "Well, I wouldn't expect you to understand this," in front of others. Or maybe it was at a family dinner, when someone joked at your expense. That's just typical of you, isn't it? Always messing things up. The room usually looks to you, waiting for your response. Most people either snap back defensively or laugh it off awkwardly, betraying that the words stung. But imagine instead, you pause, you let the silence hang for a moment. You hold their eyes calmly. You don't rush to fill the space. That pause becomes heavier than their insult. Everyone feels it. And suddenly, it's no longer you who looks small. It's them. The power of pause is not about avoiding the issue, but about reclaiming control. When you pause, you're telling yourself, first, I will not be dictated by their words. I choose my response. That shift in mindset alone is empowering. It places you back in the driver's seat instead of being pulled along by their negativity. You are not denying the sting of their comment. You are simply refusing to let it steer your emotions. What happens in those few seconds of silence is subtle, but extraordinary. Often, the person who delivered the belittling comment starts to feel the discomfort they tried to impose on you. Their confidence wavers. Their smile falters. They may even try to fill the silence by justifying themselves. I didn't mean it like that. Or, I was just joking. The pause forces them to hear their own words echoed back in their mind, and for many, that is enough to expose the pettiness of their remark. This technique draws from the wisdom of some of the greatest leaders, negotiators, and even spiritual teachers in history. They understood that silence has a gravity of its own. In conversations filled with tension, the one who controls the silence controls the room. Think about it. How many times have you been in a heated debate, and the one who paused before speaking seemed wiser, more grounded, more respected? That's no accident. It's the same principle at play. Of course, pausing does not mean doing nothing forever. It is the foundation of what comes next. The pause is the moment where you reclaim clarity. You can breathe, you can assess the situation, you can decide, do I respond with humor? Do I deflect? Do I expose the insecurity behind their words? Or do I choose to let this one go altogether? Without the pause, you are reactive. With the pause, you are strategic. There's also another layer here, the impact on the people around you. Belittling comments often happen in public settings: meetings, gatherings, group chats, dinners. Everyone is watching not just the insult, but your response. When you leap into defensiveness, you may appear rattled. When you shoot back angrily, you may look equally aggressive. But when you pause, remain calm, and choose your words carefully, people see your composure. They see your dignity, and they often begin to respect you more while viewing the person who made the comment as insecure or petty. The hardest part, of course, is mastering the urge to immediately reply. It takes discipline to pause when everything in you wants to fight back. But that discipline is where real power lies. One technique that helps is focusing on your breath in that moment. When the insult lands, inhale slowly, count to 3 before speaking. Use those 3 seconds to remind yourself, their words do not define me, my response does. That simple ritual can change everything. Imagine being in a meeting where someone undermines your input with a sarcastic jab. Instead of rushing to defend yourself, you pause, take a slow breath, and look at them calmly. You've already shifted the dynamic, you've shown self-control. And now, when you choose to respond, your words will carry more weight because they are not coming from emotion but from grounded confidence. This isn't just theory, it's practice. Try it in small moments first. The next time someone makes a snide remark, resist the urge to instantly fill the silence, count those seconds, watch the shift. You'll notice that often, the power of pause alone is enough to deflate the moment. Other times, it prepares the ground for a smarter, sharper response that protects your dignity without escalating the conflict. Belittling comments will always exist. You cannot control what people choose to say, but you can control the space between their words and your reaction. And in that space, the pause, you hold the most powerful tool of all. Because when you master silence, you master yourself, and when you master yourself, no insult can truly diminish you. When someone delivers a belittling comment, Their goal is almost always the same: to shift the spotlight onto your supposed weakness, to make you doubt yourself, and to entertain others at your expense. But here's the truth that many people forget: an insult reveals far more about the person who delivers it than the one who receives it. That's why one of the smartest responses is not to defend yourself endlessly, but to turn the mirror back toward them. Instead of carrying the weight of their words, you hand it right back, letting them face the insecurity and intention behind their comment. Belittling is never just about the words spoken. It's about the motive. Someone who says, "You'll never understand this," isn't really offering a fact. They're displaying their own need to feel superior. Someone who says, "You're just not cut out for this," isn't providing wisdom. They're revealing their own fear of being outshined. And someone who jokes at your expense in front of others isn't trying to connect. They're trying to gain cheap laughter to hide their own lack of confidence. When you turn the mirror, you expose this reality without shouting, without drama, and without lowering yourself to their level. There are subtle ways to do this that disarm the moment with dignity. For example, if someone dismisses your input by saying, "Well, that's a silly idea," instead of defending the idea point by point, you might calmly reply, "What makes you say that?" Or, "Interesting, why do you feel that way?" Suddenly, the spotlight is no longer on you, it's on them. They are forced to explain themselves. And often, they cannot. The room starts to see that the belittling wasn't grounded in truth, but in arrogance. By asking the right question, you've held up a mirror and shown everyone what really happened. Another way to turn the mirror is by reframing their comment. If someone says, "You're too sensitive," you can respond, or "Maybe you're just too comfortable being unkind." If they say, "You don't belong here," you can respond, "Strange, I was invited to the same table as you." These responses don't lash out. They reveal the insecurity or contradiction in the other person's words. They make the aggressor pause, because suddenly the energy of their attack is bouncing back at them. The beauty of this approach is that it strips the belittler of their intended power. Their plan was to make you flinch. Their plan was to get the room laughing at you, to get you questioning yourself. But by calmly shining the light on them, you reveal the cracks in their armor. They can no longer hide behind sarcasm or false confidence, because the room sees what you see, that their words say more about them than they do about you. Turning the mirror is not about cruelty, though. It's not about humiliating someone the way they tried to humiliate you. It's about clarity. It's about refusing to accept the false image of yourself they're trying to paint, and instead allowing their own behavior to expose itself. In fact, sometimes the mirror can be as simple as silence combined with a raised eyebrow, a knowing smile, or the calm question, "Are you okay?" That last one is especially powerful. Imagine someone throws an insult, and instead of shrinking or snapping, you ask gently, "Are you okay?" It unsettles them because you've reframed the situation. Now it looks less like you're the weak one and more like they're the one struggling. What makes this method so effective is that it uses their own energy against them. Instead of absorbing the negativity, you redirect it back. Think of it like martial arts, where the goal is not to fight force with force, but to use the opponent's momentum to topple them. That's exactly what turning the mirror does. It requires less energy from you, yet it has far greater impact. Of course, this takes practice. In the heat of the moment, your instinct may be to defend yourself. You may want to explain why you're not stupid, why your idea is valid, why their judgment is unfair. But explanations rarely change a belittler's mind. They weren't looking for truth in the first place, they were looking for dominance. By turning the mirror, you deny them that dominance. You don't give them what they came for, and in that moment, you've already won. Let's imagine a scenario: you're in a meeting, and after you share your idea, someone scoffs and says, "Well, that's the dumbest suggestion I've heard all day." Most people in that position would either go red in the face, rush to defend the idea, or laugh nervously to ease the tension. But instead, you pause, look them in the eye, and say calmly, "Interesting. What part of it do you find dumb?" The room shifts. Suddenly, they have to justify themselves. If they stammer or can't explain, everyone sees the hollowness of their comment. If they try to elaborate, you've just forced them into an actual conversation instead of a cheap jab. Either way, you flip the dynamic. This approach also builds your own inner strength. Every time you practice turning the mirror, you remind yourself that other people's words don't define you. You begin to see belittling not as a verdict on your worth, but as a reflection of their insecurity. Over time, that perspective frees you. You stop fearing criticism. You stop internalizing negativity. You start walking into rooms with quiet confidence, knowing that even if someone tries to belittle you, you have the tools to stand tall without losing your cool. And perhaps most importantly, when you turn the mirror, you inspire others. People who witness you handle belittling with grace often feel empowered themselves. They see that it's possible to respond without aggression, without collapse, with strength and dignity. In many ways, you're teaching by example, showing others that they, too, don't have to be at the mercy of cruel words. So the next time someone tries to cut you down, don't rush to explain or defend. Don't let their words define the moment. Instead, calmly hold up the mirror. Let their insult reflect back where it belongs. Because when you stop carrying their insecurity as your burden, you reveal the truth their words are about them, not you. And in that revelation, you take back your power. When someone belittles you, the sting only lands where there is already doubt. That's why the smartest response often has less to do with clever words and more to do with your own inner conviction. Belittling comments gain their power from the cracks in your self-belief. If you're not sure of your worth, their jab digs deep. If you question your abilities, their remark sounds like confirmation. But when you own your confidence, when you know who you are and what you bring to the table, the insult bounces off. Their words may be sharp, but they cannot pierce armor that is built from self-respect. Confidence doesn't mean arrogance. It doesn't mean shouting your value from the rooftops or trying to convince everyone you're the best in the room. True confidence is quieter, calmer, and much more unshakable. It's the ability to stand there, hear their comment, and not be moved. You don't need to prove anything because you already know the truth about yourself. And when you respond from that place of assurance, the entire dynamic changes. Let's imagine this in practice. You're at work, and after you make a suggestion, someone snickers and says, "Well, that's exactly what I'd expect from you." The implication is clear: you're not capable of contributing something valuable. Now, if you're unsure of your worth, this lands like a punch. You might go quiet, avoid speaking up again, or over-explain yourself just to be heard. But if you own your confidence, your response is different. You can look them in the eye and say calmly, "I stand by my suggestion." That's it. You don't justify. You don't shrink. You don't try to win them over. You affirm yourself, and that is enough. What makes this powerful is that it breaks the cycle of seeking validation from the very person who is trying to undermine you. Too often, when belittled, people scramble to defend themselves to the one who insulted them, as if the person who mocked them should also be the one to grant them approval. But that's a losing game. When you own your confidence, you no longer need their permission to feel worthy. You don't look outward for reassurance, you anchor inward. This is why self-awareness is so essential. Confidence isn't about pretending you're flawless. It's about knowing your strengths, acknowledging your weaknesses without shame, and refusing to let someone else define your value. For instance, if someone sneers, "You're terrible at presentations," you could calmly respond, "Public speaking isn't my strongest area, but my ideas stand on their own." That's confidence. You don't deny the weakness, but you also don't let it erase your strength. You own your reality, and that makes their attempt to belittle you powerless. Confidence also shows itself in body language. Before you even speak, people are reading your presence. Do you shrink when insulted, avoiding eye contact, folding into yourself? Or do you remain steady, shoulders back, voice calm, gaze direct? Owning your confidence means embodying it even in the silent moments. When your posture says, "I am not intimidated," you often don't need to say much at all. The belittler quickly realizes their attempt isn't working. It's important to note that confidence is contagious. When you model it, others feel safer standing in their own. In a group setting, when you respond to belittling with self-assured calm, you don't just protect your dignity, you set the tone for everyone watching. You show them that insults don't have to control the narrative, that they too can stand firm without aggression. This influence can shift entire cultures from toxic workplaces to family dynamics. Building this kind of confidence requires intentional practice. It's not about memorizing snappy comebacks. It's about strengthening your inner foundation so that you don't crumble when challenged. Start by reminding yourself daily of your value, not in vague affirmations, but in specific truths. I bring creativity to my team. I am dependable in crisis. I have overcome challenges that prove my resilience. These reminders solidify your sense of self so that when someone tries to chip away at you, they're not striking soft clay, they're striking stone. There's also a subtle but crucial shift in mindset that helps. Stop treating belittling comments as verdicts and start treating them as reflections. They are not judgments of your worth. They are mirrors of the speaker's own insecurities. When you own your confidence, you can hear someone say, "You'll never succeed." And instead of wondering if it's true, you recognize it as a confession of their own fear of failure. That perspective gives you distance. Their words don't define you, they expose them. Consider a personal example. Imagine you've started a new project and someone smirks. Good luck with that. You'll probably give up halfway. If you doubt yourself, that seed of doubt may grow. But if you own your confidence, you can smile and say, "I finish what matters to me. This matters." No hostility, no lengthy defense, just a calm assertion of your truth. That's enough to close the conversation because you've made it clear that their comment does not alter your reality. And here's the deeper truth: every time you respond to belittling with confidence, you train yourself to detach from other people's opinions. You realize that dignity isn't something others can hand to you or take away. It's something you hold with them. Over time, this becomes liberating. You stop walking into rooms wondering, what will they think of me? And start walking in knowing, I know who I am, regardless of what they say. That's the kind of strength no insult can touch. In the end, belittling comments are like arrows, they only pierce where you are unarmored. Owning your confidence is about putting on that armor, not by hiding, but by standing tall in who you are. You don't need to shout. You don't need to fight. You don't need to convince anyone. You simply live from the quiet, steady truth that you are enough. And once you carry that truth, every attempt to belittle you begins to sound hollow, because no matter what they say, you already know your worth is not up for debate. There's a reason humor disarms tension so effectively. It shifts the energy in the room. When someone makes a belittling comment, their goal, whether conscious or not, is to diminish you, to put you in a smaller box. They expect you to bristle, defend yourself, or retreat. What they rarely expect is for you to meet their jab with a touch of humor. That simple choice flips the script. Instead of looking like the victim, you become the one steering the interaction. You're not ignoring their words, but you're refusing to feed the negativity with more negativity. Humor has a way of exposing the absurdity in an insult. Let's say someone sneers, "You're not really cut out for this." Instead of firing back with anger or sinking into silence, you smile and reply, "Well, thank goodness I didn't get the memo." Or, "I might have missed out on all this fun." The tone is light, playful, even slightly self-deprecating, but it carries strength. You show that their words haven't shaken you. In fact, you've turned them into material. Now the room laughs with you, not at you, and the person who tried to cut you down looks like the one out of step. The beauty of humor in these situations is that it lets you reclaim power without aggression. Anger escalates, silence can feel like surrender. But humor makes you untouchable. It signals confidence and composure. To laugh in the face of a jab says, "You don't define me. Your words can't control me." That kind of resilience is magnetic. People respect it because it shows both strength and grace. Of course, humor is an art. It's not about being cruel in return or turning the situation into open mockery of the other person. That kind of humor backfires because it makes you look defensive or mean-spirited. Strategic humor aims higher. It lightens the air, highlights your resilience, and often makes the insulter realize just how unnecessary their comment was. For instance, if someone mutters, "Wow, you really think you're an expert," you could smile and say, "Well, if enthusiasm counts, I'm overqualified." Suddenly, the conversation has shifted from cutting to playful, and you've redirected the spotlight back onto your own confidence. Humor also protects your dignity in public spaces. Picture a meeting where someone throws a subtle dig your way. The tension could grow thick if you meet them with confrontation. But if you crack a witty, light remark, you diffuse the discomfort for everyone in the room. Not only do you save your own pride, but you also win the room by showing poise. People gravitate toward the one who can turn awkwardness into laughter. You become memorable, not for being attacked, but for how you handled it with ease. There's a psychological principle at work here. When people laugh, their defenses lower. Humor bypasses resistance. It interrupts the pattern of hostility and replaces it with connection. Even those who don't particularly like you may find themselves chuckling in spite of themselves, which breaks down the walls of animosity. More importantly, you walk away with your head high because you didn't get pulled into the mud. But let's not mistake humor for avoidance. Some people worry that laughing off a comment minimizes the insult or gives the other person permission to continue. The truth is, humor doesn't erase the disrespect, it redirects it. When you respond with humor, you make it clear that the attempt to belittle you failed. Their comment didn't land. Instead, it became your punchline. That failure discourages them from trying again because no one likes to be the setup for someone else's wit. And humor doesn't always have to be clever. Sometimes it's as simple as exaggerating their words into something obviously ridiculous. Imagine someone saying, "You'll never finish that project." You could grin and reply, "Perfect, I'll just put it next to the other 20 I've apparently abandoned." It's tongue in cheek, but it demonstrates that you're not rattled. The exaggeration throws their remark into the realm of comedy, robbing it of its sting. One of the most powerful aspects of humor is that it reveals self-control. Anyone can lash out when provoked. Anyone can sulk or withdraw. But to smile, to quip, to find lightness in the middle of an attack, that takes discipline. It proves that you are not at the mercy of someone else's negativity. You own your emotional response. And when you own your response, you own the interaction. Think of some of history's great leaders and communicators. Many of them used humor as a shield and a sword. They could be insulted on stage, mocked in debates, or doubted in public, and they'd answer with a line so quick and charming that the audience laughed and the tension vanished. Humor didn't make them weaker, it made them stronger. It showed the world they were unflappable. You can bring that same skill into your daily life, no matter who tries to belittle you. Of course, humor requires balance. Not every moment calls for it, and not every jab is worth a witty response. Sometimes silence is the smartest move, sometimes direct clarity is needed. But when the situation allows, Humor is a powerful choice. It reminds you and everyone watching that you are not defined by someone else's attempt to cut you down. You define yourself, and you do it with wit, charm, and confidence. The next time someone throws a belittling comment your way, pause for a moment. Instead of feeling the pressure to defend yourself or the pull to lash out, ask, how can I lighten this? How can I flip this into something funny? You may find that the smartest response isn't to fight or flee, but to laugh, because laughter in those moments is proof of strength, it's proof of control, and it's proof that no matter what they say, you'll always have the last word, delivered with a smile. Belittling comments may sting in the moment, but what truly determines their long-term impact is whether you allow them to continue unchecked. This is where boundaries become crucial. Boundaries are not walls you build to shut people out. They are lines that communicate what behavior you will and will not accept. Without them, you leave yourself open to repeated disrespect. With them, you protect your dignity and you teach others how to treat you. When someone belittles you once, it may feel like a passing remark, but if the pattern repeats and you say nothing, you silently give permission. Over time, those words can erode your confidence, not because they carry truth, but because you've allowed them to echo unchallenged. Setting boundaries interrupts that cycle. It sends a message, I will not be spoken to this way. And that message is not just for the other person. It's for yourself as well. Boundaries require clarity. They are not hints or vague reactions. Rolling your eyes or withdrawing may express your discomfort, but they don't establish limits. Boundaries are spoken direct and firm. For example, if a colleague dismisses your ideas with a sneer, you might say, if you disagree, I'm open to hearing your reasoning, but don't belittle my contribution. That statement is clear. It invites dialogue without tolerating disrespect. You're not shutting them down, you're shutting down the behavior. The challenge with boundaries is that they often feel uncomfortable to enforce. Many people worry that they'll come across as confrontational, difficult, or overly sensitive. But here's the truth, people who respect you will respect your boundaries. The only ones who bristle at them are those who benefit from crossing them. Think about that. If someone grows defensive when you calmly set a limit, that says more about their need for control than about your right to dignity. Boundaries are not just for individuals, they set the tone in groups. Consider a family gathering where a relative makes a habit of teasing you under the guise of just joking. If you've laughed it off for years, they assume it's fair game. But the moment you say, I know you mean it as a joke, but I don't appreciate being spoken to like that, you shift the entire dynamic. The comment loses its power because you stripped away its cover. Others in the room take notice too, and your courage gives them permission to set boundaries of their own. It's also important to remember that boundaries are less about changing others and more about protecting yourself. You cannot control whether someone chooses to be disrespectful. What you can control is your response. If someone crosses a boundary you've set, you follow through with consequences. That might mean disengaging from the conversation, limiting your contact, or in professional settings, escalating the issue to leadership. Without consequences, boundaries are just words. With consequences, they become commitments. Let's take a workplace example. Imagine a supervisor constantly undermines you in meetings with little jabs like, well, you wouldn't understand this anyway. The first time, you might respond with humor or confidence. But if the behavior continues, you must set a boundary. I need you to address me respectfully in meetings. These kinds of comments are not acceptable. If it happens again, you follow through, document the behavior, bring it to HR, or remove yourself from projects where you are subjected to repeated disrespect. That's not weakness, that's self-respect. Boundaries also apply to the way you speak to yourself. Belittling comments from others are damaging, but the voice that echoes loudest is often your own. If you're in the habit of repeating insults to yourself, maybe I really am useless, maybe I can't handle this, you must set internal boundaries too. You tell yourself, I will not talk to myself this way. You replace self-criticism with self-compassion, and you protect your mind from becoming an extension of someone else's disrespect. There's power in short, direct phrases when setting boundaries. Statements like, don't speak to me that way, or that's not acceptable, don't invite debate. They are simple, clear, and firm. You don't need to justify or over-explain. In fact, over-explaining often weakens the boundary by suggesting it's negotiable. Boundaries are not arguments. They are statements of self-respect. The key is consistency. Boundaries lose strength if they are only enforced occasionally. If you tolerate belittling one day and object the next, people get mixed signals. They learn that sometimes their behavior is acceptable, and they push to find those weak spots. But when you hold the line every time, even if it feels repetitive, you train others to adjust their behavior. It's no different than teaching someone how to interact with you. You're showing them the rules of engagement in your presence. Some people will test those rules. They'll push back, accuse you of being too sensitive, or try to disguise their belittling as just being honest. That's when your resolve matters most. Remember, Setting a boundary is not about convincing them, it's about committing to yourself. You don't need their agreement for your limit to stand. You only need the courage to hold it. Boundaries also build trust with yourself. Every time you speak up, you reinforce the belief that you are worth protecting. Over time, this strengthens your confidence and makes it easier to enforce boundaries in other areas of life. You stop shrinking to accommodate disrespect, and you start expecting the respect you deserve. That shift is life-changing because it ripples into every relationship you have, at work, at home, and with yourself. Ultimately, belittling comments lose their power not when they stop coming, but when you stop allowing them to define your reality. Boundaries are the tool that ensures that. They remind others where the line is, but more importantly, they remind you that your dignity is non-negotiable. And the moment you treat it that way, others have no choice but to follow suit or remove themselves from your life. Boundaries are not barriers, they are bridges between who you are and how you demand to be treated. They connect your inner worth to your outer world, and when you build those bridges strong, no belittling comment can shake them. Instead of shrinking under someone's words, you stand tall, firm, and unmovable. Because the line has been drawn and you know exactly where you stand. Silence is often misunderstood. Too many people mistake it for weakness, passivity, or surrender. Yet, when used with intention, silence is one of the most powerful responses to belittling comments. It carries weight because it denies the belittler the one thing they crave: your reaction. Belittling thrives on attention. It feeds off of the energy you give when you bristle, argue, or defend. But when you respond with deliberate silence, you starve it. You make it clear that their words are not worthy of your energy. The key is that silence must be chosen, not imposed. There is a difference between freezing in the moment because you feel powerless and standing tall, letting a comment hang in the air, and refusing to dignify it with a reply. The first is weakness, the second is mastery. True silence is an active decision. I am not engaging with this because it does not deserve me. That subtle shift transforms silence from avoidance into authority. Imagine someone says to you in a meeting, "You really don't add much here, do you?" Most people would rush to defend themselves or stumble into explaining their contributions. But what if instead you simply turned your gaze toward them, held it calmly for a few seconds, and said nothing? The room would feel the tension. Their words would echo in the silence, stripped of humor, stripped of legitimacy, until everyone saw them for what they were: a small, insecure, and inappropriate. That is the brilliance of silence. It exposes the pettiness of the insult without you lifting a finger. Silence also puts the responsibility back where it belongs. When someone belittles you, they want you to carry the weight of their words. They want to shift their insecurity onto your shoulders. But when you don't respond, you leave that weight with them. They are forced to sit in the awkwardness of their own remark, to face the reality that their attempt at cutting you down fell flat, and very often they regret saying it at all. Silence becomes a mirror, reflecting their behavior back at them. It's worth noting that silence is not the same as bottling up your feelings. Choosing silence doesn't mean you ignore the disrespect forever. It means you don't reward it in the moment. Later, when emotions have cooled, you may address the behavior directly or set a boundary. But in that instant, silence becomes your shield. It keeps you composed, it preserves your dignity, and it ensures you're responding on your terms, not theirs. One of the reasons silence is so effective is because it disrupts expectations. People expect resistance. They expect counterattacks or wounded reactions. When they get neither, it destabilizes their script. They're left uncertain, uncomfortable, and often embarrassed. Think of it like a chess game. Instead of reacting to their aggressive move, you pause, hold the board steady, and let them realize their strategy has failed. Silence changes the rhythm of the interaction, and in that pause, you reclaim control. Silence also demonstrates discipline. Anyone can fire back with words in the heat of the moment, but restraint requires strength. It shows that you're not at the mercy of someone else's tongue. You have the self-control to decide what deserves your energy and what doesn't. And in a world where people are constantly triggered into reaction, that kind of discipline commands respect. Even those who disagree with you recognize the authority in someone who doesn't need to defend themselves against every insult. Consider the visual of silence. It's not slouching or shrinking into the background. It's standing tall, shoulders relaxed, eyes steady. It's the slight smile that says, "You don't get to move me." This physical presence amplifies the power of your silence. People notice the difference between retreat and refusal. The first looks like defeat, the second radiates confidence. Silence is particularly powerful in relationships. Sometimes the most damaging comments come not from strangers or colleagues, but from loved ones. In those moments, firing back may escalate into conflict, while silence can create the space for reflection. Imagine a partner making a thoughtless remark meant to sting. Instead of arguing, you let the silence settle. That pause is not empty, it's full of meaning. It communicates, "What you just said does not deserve my energy." Often, silence in intimate relationships forces the other person to recognize the hurt they've caused more effectively than any heated words could. There's also a spiritual quality to silence. It speaks to inner peace, to the ability to remain grounded even in the face of hostility. Many great thinkers, philosophers, and leaders have emphasized the value of silence not as absence, but as presence. It's the presence of self-control, of wisdom, of strength that doesn't need to announce itself. When you use silence to respond to belittling, you tap into that deeper truth that you don't need to fight for your worth. It already exists. But silence is not a one-size-fits-all tool. There are moments when a direct boundary or a confident verbal response is necessary. The power of silence lies in its selectiveness. When you choose silence deliberately, people notice, they sense the weight of it. Too much silence can come across as avoidance, but well-placed silence lands like a hammer. It communicates volumes without saying a word. The key to mastering silence is pairing it with presence. Look them in the eye, hold your ground, let the words hang, and then move on, continue with your point, shift the conversation, or simply disengage. By not giving their comment center stage, you rob it of oxygen. What's left is not your wounded pride, but their awkwardness. That's the real reversal of power. At its core, choosing silent belittling comments will always exist at work, in relationships, and in everyday interactions. We cannot control the words that come from other people's mouths, but we can always control the way we respond. That is where true strength lies. Throughout this speech, we've seen that the smartest response is not about shouting louder, proving ourselves, or lowering our standards to match someone else's negativity. Instead, it's about reclaiming the power of choice. Sometimes it means calmly calling out the behavior. Sometimes it means setting a firm boundary, and other times it means letting silence do the talking. Each response is about refusing to hand over your peace to someone else's insecurity. When we master this skill, something shifts inside us. We stop carrying the weight of other people's words. We stop letting cheap insults dictate our emotions or our worth. And in their place, we find clarity, dignity, and confidence. We learn that respect doesn't come from forcing others to recognize our value. It comes from living it ourselves consistently, no matter how others treat us. So the next time someone tries to belittle you, remember this: their words only have as much power as you give them. Stand tall, choose wisely, and never let small comments make you shrink. Because the smartest response isn't about winning the moment. It's about protecting the person you are becoming.